level with me. Can you plan an entire one-shot in 2.5 hours while sitting in your local tavern? Hello and welcome to Level With Me, the YouTube channel where we can level up our TTRPG experience together. My name is Will, and today I'm going to be telling you about how I set up the most ridiculous one-shot I've ever played in, being part of, and it was very silly. I don't know about your D&D group, but my D&D group used to meet up every 2 weeks, as and when we could, because we have very different work schedules. But there was one time we went 3 weeks without D&D, and people needed their fix. So this is how I set up a one-shot for us to play. Before we jump into the video, just a reminder that we work with shared XP at this table, so if you have any tips, tricks, or thoughts about this style of play, leave them in the comment section below to dish out some experience points to the players in our community. D&D, but everyone is a kobold. That is the one-shot session. For those of you who don't know, and I didn't know before really running this session, kobolds are bad. I mean, I knew they were squishy, but 5 HP? And that's not even the worst bit. When you look at their ability scores, they've only got 1 positive score in their dexterity with +2. The rest are all negative. And then when you look at the class features, one is good, but it is nullified by the other one. One of the class features is Packed Tactics. When one kobold is within 5 feet of an enemy, you get advantage on your attack. However, it's possibly nullified by the second feature, Sunlight Sensitivity. If it is sunny, where you are doing combat, you roll with disadvantage. So it kind of nullifies the what's the point? Why? Back in March 2024, Oxventure, DM'd by Luke Westaway, ran a D&D but everyone is a kobold session between their penultimate series and their final series of the main game. If you haven't checked out those videos, please go and do so, because they are some of the best D&D content out there that kind of broke the mold a little bit. My favorite one is D&D but everyone has amnesia, where they literally got scratch card character sheets made up, and whenever you try something and they're asked for a skill check, you have to scratch off to see if you're good at it. So the players were constantly trying to work out what class and race they are through the entire session. Very, very good. But that kobold-only session was my introduction to kobolds. Later in the year, I managed to see Oxventure live at MCM London, where Luke Westaway again hosted a kobold-only session, but this time they had a live audience to play with. In the initial kobold-only run, Westaway had a kobold name randomizer, which would give a kobold name and a kobold trait that the characters and the players would have to act out. For example, and I have the list written up here, the first round of kobolds were Ellen Rose as Dazdia the Enthusiastic, Mike Channel as Zarya the Easily Discouraged, Jaina Douglas as Zareh the Sage, Andy Farron as Colgrace the Opportunistic, and Johnny Chiodini as Kragok the Impractical. That's their setup, that's all they get. In the live version that I saw, we as the audience were given cards that simply said blank the blank, kobold name the trait, and we put it in a box, and they went up to the box and just selected new kobolds as and when they needed them. And I have to say, they smashed it with the acting out the suggestions. My favorite name that was drawn was simply Egbert the Careless, because that is Mike Channel's character name in the main series of Oxventure. However, my favorite ones portrayed by the players were from Andy Farron and Johnny Chiodini. When Johnny picked their first character, they drew Asdor the Smug, and Chiodini fully got that perfect mix between comedy and I want to punch this character in the face.
Your eyes slowly drift towards each other, and then there's a sort of faint snapping sound as you think yourself to death.
Right.
God, it's just nice to be alive sometimes, you know?
It was so good. However, later on, he also drew Meg the Bad Influence.
Meg is going to drape an arm around Velocity and go, hey, I bet you can't cut your own head off with a dagger.
And he was there going, okay.
I cut my own head off with a dagger.
Andy's a standout one, was Velocity the Weird, and it's so good that Andy picked this one because I don't think another player could have played it as well as him. He messed with Luke's DMing, literally passing him notes, stroking his face, and at one point going over and using Luke's microphone in the middle of the session.
It took a little while, and you're heading in broadly the same direction.
Yeah, I think our primary objective should be joining up with the others. What do you think?
However, it was when Andy decided to take his D20 and his microphone backstage and just play Dungeons and Dragons backstage for a bit. Just for like 5 minutes. It's weird, man.
It's fine, I'm just going to play from back here for a bit. So yeah, guys, I think we should get caught up, you know? I think that's the main objective. So if we kind of make our way out of this cave, and then, yeah, we'll catch up with the others. How does that sound?
Hence, nailing the brief. But unfortunately, I did not have a live audience to submit names, so how did I get past this hurdle? I made a Google Doc with 100 Kobold names and traits. Like Oxventure, I gave them direct traits like the disloyal. I gave them traits that were kind of up for interpretation, like Pew the blurry. What does the blurry mean? I don't know, that's up to you to decide. I'm just the guy who writes the names. But then I also gave them real-world jobs, and 2 of them were picked out during the session: Roland the sports commentator and Al Capone the gangster. And my friends did so well with those characters. It was very, very fun to be, I was gonna say in the room, it was on Discord. Very, very fun to see. When my friends needed a new kobold, they just simply messaged me privately on WhatsApp, and I sent back the corresponding name and trait of the kobold. If they picked a number that's already come up, I just say choose again, and repeat until they find a new number. Guess what number came up 4 times between 1 and 100? Yeah, you know it. My friends are dirty. Other than the list of kobolds and the plot, the only 2 things you need to really get a hold of as DM is what skills are affected by what ability scores. For example, strength only affects athletics because you're only going to be using the 6 ability scores, not the full list of skills like you would on a regular player character sheet. The other thing you need to prepare is the mentality of yes and. Kobolds are bad, so when your players want to do something, yes and it. At one point my players reached a raging river and they said, oh, can we just check to see if there's any fallen logs so we can build a bridge? I was like, yeah, roll a perception check, wisdom perception. And they did it and succeeded. So whatever they try and do, try and make it happen. Cater to what they think they need in the moment, because kobolds suck. So other than the plot, the kobold names, and the mentality you have to have as a DM, what else do you need to run the session? Well, nothing, actually. It's so fast-moving that you don't need to have a map, soundscape, and lighting planned out because a section of the session might only take 20 minutes. There's no need to plan that in depth. Hell, you don't even need a DM screen for this session because the kobolds are that squishy, you're going to kill them regardless. There is no need for you to fudge rolls today. Not that we fudge rolls on this channel. You don't even need all your players to be prompt and on time. If someone is running 20 minutes late, that's fine. They can arrive and you just get their first kobold in whenever is suitable. And speaking of your players, they don't even need a full set of dice. They simply need a D20 and a D4. D20 for skill checks and D4 for the attacks a kobold has. You also have to make it clear to your players that this is going to be a silly session. Do not expect anything deep or meaningful, sincere, sensitive, dramatic. I say that actually. There was a very dramatic moment right at the end of my session. I'm going to give a full session breakdown in next week's video. As a DM, you are going to need a full set of dice just to deal out damage, and we're going to talk about why in a second. So, what was the storyline of this session that had a dramatic ending? Well, I'll hold my hands up and say, I straight up stole Luke Westaway's story. But this is the kind of session where you can fill in the blanks yourself. You have the setup, you have the ending, and whatever comes in between is up to you.
The kobolds are in their den as they have been for decades, for centuries. But sadly, the den mother has been taken sick with a mysterious illness. The Kobold sages know of only one cure, but it's somewhere that the kobolds have not been for generations. The surface.
Add dun-dun-duns in post. Thank you, Will. Through the session, your elite Kobold team are going to be faced with a lot of obstacles, hurdles, and challenges, and this is where you can make the adventure your own. From here, when they get that set up that they're off to go find a mystical herb, you can do whatever you want. There are no rules, but you have to remember when it comes to the challenges that your Kobolds face, the Kobolds are squishy. They are not built like the superhuman player characters that your players usually embody. The challenges can be super mundane. Heavy lifting, for example, if they drop it, they take 1 damage, they're down to 4. Even any combat encounters that would be trivial for your true player characters are going to be difficult for the Kobolds. The player characters, no doubt, can handle some basic skeletons in a graveyard. The Kobolds probably can't. Actually, whilst writing the script, I had a really stupid idea for an encounter. If you have your player Kobolds compete against a rival Kobold team, both vying for the same finale, if they have to fight at any point, it's going to be awful. Especially if it's in daylight, because they're all going to be rolling with disadvantage thanks to sunlight sensitivity, and that is definitely an encounter I'm going to use in my next session of this genre. So ridiculous, man. The hurdles that I chose to lay out for my Kobold party were literally a chasm just to reach the cave entrance so they can go out on this adventure. There's bear traps laid outside of the cave by a hunter who will appear later. There's a raging river that they must cross. They must fight against spiders in the deepest, darkest neck of the woods. There's a pit in a cornfield set up by the hunter before they meet the hunter themselves. They then have to get into town to find the botanist to find the mystical herb, and then simply getting home. I'm going to tell you why that was dramatic in next week's video. Throughout the adventure, no matter what the challenges you set up, you as a DM have to really choose the dice best suited for that occasion. Because whilst you could go through a lot of kobolds, if you decide that every damage that the kobold takes is going to be 1d12, that's no fun. The look of both fear and relief when your players survive on like 1 HP is so funny. It's like, I don't know why I'm connected to this kobold, but I need to make them survive, but I only have 1 HP. I have to be safe now and roll really, really well. So use this scale. Like I said, if they're doing some heavy lifting and they drop it on their foot, 1d4 worth of damage. They're definitely not going to die from that. However, if they are steamrolled by a boulder, make that the 1d12 damage, because there's a chance that they might still survive, and that would be funny for the players, that if one player dies from the damage done by dropping something on their foot, and then one player survives being hit by a boulder, it's... What else do I have to say there? Some challenges the kobolds absolutely breezed through, some challenges went really, really wrong, and kobold lives were lost. Looking through the Google Doc of names, whether by falling or by being washed away by a river or being crushed by a tree or by self-mutilation, yes, my players did that. My players went through 14 kobolds. And the beauty of it is that I can run that exact same session for a different group. I just have to put 14 new names in the Google Doc. Easy. And if I want to play with my friends again, I put in 14 new names and then come up with a different setting. And I've been thinking about it. It'll be so easy to do. This was mainly a forest-based session, but you could easily do one where they have to head up the mountain to the snowy peaks. They maybe have to go deeper into the den, and they are faced with a lava setting. Hell, maybe the hunters win, and they manage to get the kobolds on a ship, and the kobolds have to escape, defeat the captors, and turn that ship around. The possibilities are endless for this genre of one-shot. Kobold-only D&D was so fun, and I cannot wait to run it again. So let me know down below, is this a ridiculous playstyle for you? What location would you use and what challenges would they face? And what would be the weirdest kobold trait you would give your kobolds? Let me know in the comment section, and I'll see you in the next session. Thank you.